2, 3.
Okay, Dave,
Test, 1, 2, 3.
the audio's kind of low, so.
He's not a real loud talker.
Bump it up.
He doesn't scream.
I can talk up, but
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Maybe-
Go ahead and talk up.
testing
Yes,
1, 2, 3. Testing 1, 2, 3.
I think that'll be okay.
Testing
if you-
1, 2,
if you-
1, 2. I'll
Yeah,
project a
and-
little
and-
bit when we
And I'm
do it.
gonna, bring it up on here too.
Okay.
That'll help. Okay. Go ahead.
Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing 1, 2.
Oh. Yeah, I think that'll be good. So whenever you guys are ready.
Whenever we're
I'm in
ready,
charge.
okay.
He's in charge.
Okay, I am ready. Today's date is July the 7th, 2015. My name is Ratibu Jaycox, and I am interviewing Mansie Booker for the Archiving Black History Project in the inland area. Would you spell your first and last name, Mr. Booker?
First name is Mansie, M-A-N-S-I-E. Last name Booker, B-O-O-K-E-R.
And we're conducting the interview at the San Bernardino County Superintendent of Schools. And thanks so much for allowing us to interview you, Mr. Booker. I notice here that you mark arts and entertainment as one area you would like to be interviewed in. What do you mean by that, art and entertainment? What do you think we mean?
Well,
Can we stop for a second?
Sure.
Yeah.
I see the signal moving, but I don't hear it.
Oh, okay.
on the
I
camera.
do this for a living. Let me check it out.
Okay. Yeah.
This first time, for me,
I
he's
don't know.
in front, so we can
Signal's
start
going.
again.
I don't actually hear it from here. Do you wanna? So.
Okay.
Test, test.
Test,
Test, test.
Test, one,
Oh, you-
two, three.
Okay.
Somewhere you should have a
Oh,
dial to turn.
for here.
Yeah, to turn your
Okay.
headset up.
You know what, I think it's on inside the menu, but that's fine. If
Yeah.
you hear it, I'm fine.
Do we start again?
Actually, you can start, write that next question you were gonna ask him,
Okay.
because it was kinda in between.
Yeah, I remember the question.
Yeah,
The reason that, are you rolling?
I am, I'm straight rolling.
Okay. The reason that I say arts and entertainment because in my military career, I was a combat videographer. So I traveled around the world doing video for the Air Force and for the Department of Defense. After retiring, I was a production manager for Channel 3 here in San Bernardino. Again, arts and entertainment, so that's why I marked that.
So how long were you in the military?
I spent 26 wonderful years.
26 years,
They had to
so.
put me out.
So where were you born?
I was born in Burlington, North Carolina, which is about 70 miles from Raleigh, which is the capital.
Okay, is Burlington?
Burlington.
Burlington, so is that on the coast of
No,
North
it isn't.
Carolina?
It's in the central part of North Carolina.
Oh, okay, and you grew up there, and what were your mother and father's name?
Uh, My father was Mansie Booker Sr. We
Okay.
talked about that earlier. And my mother's name was Gladys Corbett, Booker, obviously. And I grew up in Raleigh, actually. My father was a minister. And again, I was born in Burlington, North Carolina, but at the age of 4, my father got reassigned to a church in Raleigh. So the family moved to Raleigh, and that's where I went to high school, elementary school, and all of that.
So you grew up in the church?
Yes, sir.
And the reason I'm asking you that, I know you work with our church, Temple Missionary Baptist Church, and how long have you been working with Temple?
Since 1994.
1994, and you run our
Video production team at the church.
video production at Temple Baptist. And when did you get the desire to work cameras and be in filming and production and that type of thing? Was it in the military or before?
It was before, actually. I remember when I was in the 10th grade in high school, I had to write a composition on what I would be doing 10 years from that particular date. And I was the family photographer. So I used to play around with cameras all the time. So I said I wanted to be a photographer. So following the graduation from high school, I went into the military. And the first 3 years or 4 years that I was in intelligence. I was stationed overseas monitoring Russian communications, Chinese communications, Vietnamese communications during the Vietnam War. But eventually I had a chance to retrain, and I went into the motion picture and television department for the Air Force. And that's where my dream became a reality.
So were there other people, as you were growing up, you're taking pictures, your father's preaching, were your mother singing?
My mother was in the choir, but I was just taking pictures of the family, not in any kind of official capacity. Anytime you go to a picnic or you go to a family gathering, you take pictures. And I was the one who's always had the camera, little brownie Hawkeye.
So who gave you the first camera? Did you buy it or someone
My
gave it?
dad bought it.
He bought it for
But I
you?
used to, there was a man named Mr. Hinton, who was a professional photographer, and I used to watch him, and I was always fascinated with the pictures that he took and the equipment that he had, so that's where my interest.
So how old were you when you started
Probably-
watching him?
Probably 14 or 15, I guess.
So I'm trying to find out when you got the bug.
The bug was early.
The bug was early, and you got infected, and you're still doing it
To
today.
this day.
You're still doing it today. So that's good. So what type of, in the San Bernardino, you got here through the military?
I came here in the military. I was stationed in San Antonio, Texas, working at the School of Aerospace Medicine. I was doing video there for, it was just prior to the space shuttle program, so a lot of the experiments, testing for astronauts and their survivability in space was done at the School of Aerospace Medicine. So we were there to document those experiments. And I got reassigned to Headquarters Air Force Audiovisual Service, which was at Norton Air Force Base. That's the headquarters for all audiovisual within the Air Force.
In the whole lab for
Yeah,
your
so I
time?
got assigned here, and that's where I started to travel. I mean, I was gone about 150 days out of a year, just traveling around the world,
So you got to see a lot of places.
every place.
And so you call yourself well-traveled?
Yeah, I got to see, because of the camera, I got to see and do a lot of things that the average person would not see and do.
Well, when you were taking pictures as a child, the average boy and girl was not taking pictures, I
No.
assume.
They were always wanted to be in the pictures.
In the picture. And why didn't you want to be in the picture?
I just enjoyed the technology of that time. It was like a little brownie Hawkeye, it was, you had to develop the film, and eventually you got to the Polaroid cameras where it was self-developed within the camera, and that was always fascinating to me.
And I bet you have many stories to tell in front of the camera, but you've always been in the back of the camera.
At a early age, I was in back of the camera, and I've been that way ever since.
So what are some of what I was going to ask, what are some of the organizations in this area you have worked with, taken pictures of, and know about? Could you name about 3 or
wow.
4?
Wow. Well, I was a production manager at Channel 3.
Okay.
So I can start with the Black Culture Foundation.
Okay.
With the Black History Parade. When I got to Channel 3, they didn't do too much as far as the Black History Parade was concerned. They sent one camera guy over on the west side, and he was scared because of the reputation of the west side. He was scared. So when I got there, I just said, hey, if we're gonna do a parade, let's do it like the guys on NBC and CBS, let's do it like they do. So we took multiple cameras. Instead of just one, we took multiple cameras. We took a team. We had commentators with Cheryl Brown and Jim King would be the commentators.
I remember that.
I called the city department and asked, could we get one of the bucket trucks so that we could get a high angle shot over the street? And we did it nice. And we got to do interviews before the parade, did interviews during the parade. Rosa Parks, all of those people we videotaped at the Black History Parade.
At the
So
parade.
that's one of the things that we work with. I work with almost every United Way, St. Bernardine Medical Center, Easter Seals, just a lot of different organizations.
Okay, so when did you, let me focus on the parade for a moment. What year was that you began recording the parade? Do you remember?
I started work for the city in 1988,
Mm-hmm.
and I would say in 1989, that's when we expanded our coverage from that single camera to multiple cameras and the commentators and all of that, and we continue to do that for every parade, not just for the Black History Parade,
Right.
but the Red Ribbon Parade, the Christmas Parade. Any parade, we always did it with multiple cameras, with a commentator and all of that, just to make it look professional, instead of just having one little skid camera guy out there.
So the city then on Channel 3 showed that
Sure.
show, and how long, did you have to edit it or go to the
We would have
parade?
to, yeah, because there were times when there was lagging in the parade, you know,
Right.
it didn't flow very smoothly down the street. There were times when you have to go and cut stuff out, to, you know, maybe put a PSA or something in it and come back and let the parade resume. So, yeah, it'd have to be edited. And you have to put graphics, their names, the name of the group that's coming down the street. All of that stuff was done in post.
And how long did it take you to prepare it so it could be shown from the time the parade was over on a Saturday and then the time you showed it?
I'd say by Monday afternoon it was finished. Because it was a finished product, pretty much, when we left the parade site, it was already recorded. It's just going back and putting those names and putting titles and all of that kind of stuff in. That's the stuff that we had to do in post.
Okay. So, what are some of your highlights of your film? You said the United Way, Red Ribbon, Black History, other interviews of individuals at Channel 3. I know you did a lot of that, and there's particular organizations. What stands out in your mind as either a funny one or interesting one that you did?
I think the one that I'm most proud of is an interview with Rosa Parks.
Okay.
And we did that at Jim King's home when he was living here in the Inland Empire. And to sit in that room, it was like sitting with royalty. And it was just Jim King, myself, and Rosa Parks.
So what kind of question did Jim ask her? He
Just-
was the interviewer.
Jim was the interviewer, and just basically having her to recount that famous day when she refused to give up her seat on the bus in Montgomery, Alabama. And she talked about that, and it's something that I'll cherish. I got a DVD of it. I'll never let it go.
You have?
I have a DVD of that interview. Jim King gave it to me.
Well, if she was sitting there, one of the questions I always want to ask her, and maybe you can help answer this for me. A lot of images of her and narrative of her was that she was so tired, she had to sit down, and so she wouldn't give up her seat. Another part of it, that she was so tired of having to move that she wasn't going to move anymore. Which one of those are true?
She told us that she was just tired, that she had
Period.
worked all day, she had tired, and she just sat in the first seat that was available. The bus driver came back and asked her to move to the back of the bus. She refused.
And so she just, that was the
She was just
beginning.
tired.
Tired from working.
Yeah, she was a seamstress and just tired.
Okay. So she obvious was a hard working lady.
Mhm.
And she was, that day, she just was too tired to move, would be a.
Very graceful lady too. I mean,
She was.
she didn't have to give us the interview because we were there to celebrate, like an after party for the Black History Parade. And we just asked her, would she be gracious enough to give us the interview? And she said yes. And we
Wow.
took her into a private area and sat her down, and
How old was she when you did that?
she was probably, I'd say in her 60s maybe.
Mm-hmm. And you know, we have interviews you've done with us on Kwanzaa early on, and I'm sure other organizations. You said the Black Culture Foundation. What do you have for them? What have you interviewed with the Black Culture Foundation?
Oh, wow. For about the last 15 or 16 years, They've always asked me to do a video, a kind of a profile of the person that has been nominated for the Humanitarian of the Year. And they've included Dorothy Grant. They've included Valerie Pope Ludlam, Frances Grice. I couldn't think of the name. We just talked about that. Yeah, Frances Grice.
Juanita Scott.
Juanita Scott, yes. Tim Evans. The most recent one was Tim Evans from The Unforgettables. So there's about 15 or 20 of those interviews that I've done. And they're always shown on the night of the Black Culture Foundation, the Black Rose Awards. They're shown at that event.
So, do you know anybody in this area who's done more in broadcasting in the history of the Black experience than you have? I know some other photographers and other ones. Who could you name that have done some of the things?
I know that KVCR has done a lot. The station over at Valley College, I know they've done a lot. I think that because I was Black, that I opened the door for more Black exposure.
Mm-hmm.
I know that